Have you ever noticed that these guys don't work as well as these guys? And what's up with this guy? Hey guys, MasakoX here. So I was talking about our Dragon Ball villains and their arcs, as well as other characters. Bringing that back to Dragon Ball Super, we can all say that Zamasu was, a somewhat decent villain, even though his talk about justice did rub me up the wrong way many occasion. On the whole, he was a refreshing villain. And then at the same time, Jiren kind of failed to live up to expectations, nor what the producers or the writers strived for in the very end. And while the fights and action in Dragon Ball Super in isolation were actually pretty exciting, I mean, especially the Goku Kefla fight, it doesn't really hold much of a candle towards the Frieza and Cell arcs, as well as even the King Piccolo arc. Jiren and Zamasu just don't have the same satisfaction. So what's the deal with that then? Well, Haverok and I believe that we might have an idea for you, or at least a supposition. But first, a little context for you guys. Who out there is familiar with a person named Joseph Campbell? If you guys answered, isn't he the guy who does the soup, then Goku would very much appreciate your answer right now. Go get yourself some Campbell's soup, #NotSpawn. Unfortunately, that's not the Campbell we're talking about today. This particular Campbell was one of James Joyce's rising stars back in the day. James Joyce being an Irish novelist, the author of Ulysses, probably one of the greatest and most inspiring authors of the 20th century, at least according to Haverok. He's recommended many of his books to me. Campbell was one of the innovators to inspire the term monomyth, also known as the hero's journey. Now, I said journey, not legacy. Goku Jr., get out of there. Well, a monomyth is a narrative composition which has been used on many occasions throughout any kind of fascinating and successful types of media, going back all the way to literature many centuries ago. You could even look at Star Wars, Luke Skywalker's journey, that's the hero's journey of the monomyth. You could put Frodo Baggins in there, you can even put this guy in there, and it will work every time. Campbell himself explains this more in detail in his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. Campbell describes that in the monomyth world, there are 17 stages of plot development, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use all 17 in your story. You don't have to go on a checklist and go, oh no, I haven't done that, oh no, the story's ruined! You can essentially pick and choose whichever elements you want to use in your particular story, so long as it follows a certain directional path. The 17 stages can be divided into acts, or sections as you would. There's the first stage, departure, also known as separation. Act 2, initiation. Sometimes you can divide the initiation with some kind of descent at the beginning. And then of course there's Act 3, the return. In the departure part of the narrative, this is quite common in any kind of story. We are introduced to the hero or heroine's own world and environment as they have been accustomed to pretty much ever since they were born. One day though, they receive the call to action, and they can act either two ways. They can either embrace the challenge, or they can be very reluctant to answer said call. But this unknown force that comes into their lives, be it a person or some kind of spiritual desire or urge deep within them, coaxes them to actually go on said journey. The initiation section, Act 2, is basically when the hero finds their feet, discovers how to adapt themselves to this new world that they're not used to. It can be magical, it could be mental, it could be just regular stories, just a different place that they've never been to before. This is all done to exacerbate the fact that what you're seeing right now is far from the norm for this character. The hero eventually reaches a point where they're facing the final boss of this particular adventure, and must survive this ordeal by using everything that they've learned up to this point. They have to go through some kind of rites of passage, be it physical or an attitude change, something like that, and ultimately they get the glory, and then they are rewarded either spiritually or with a physical reward. The hero then begins to resume their old way of life with their new reward in tow, enlightened, feeling much more complete or somewhat different, not quite the same as they were at the beginning of the story. Although sometimes you can mix this up a bit. The hero might have something different about them. They might not want to go back to the old life. They might want to stay in this new one. You see this plot device in many westerns. A guy comes in, they do the thing, they never stay, they never stick around, and then they go away again. And of course, the monomyth isn't a perfect method. It's been criticized and adapted many times over the decades. But every single time you come back to it, you are surprised by how simple it is, and it just works. There's no wonder that George Lucas used that in A New Hope and actually knew Joseph Campbell and was able to work with them to create the original narrative, and we all know how successful Star Wars is. The monomyth still exists today, albeit slightly adapted by one Christopher Volger back in 2007. It goes a little something like this. Act 1, the departure. You get step 1, the ordinary world. Step 2, the call to adventure. Then the refusal of the call. Then the meeting with the mentor. And then crossing the first threshold. Act 2, the initiation. You have yourselves tests, allies and enemies being found and sought. Step 7 is approach to the inmost cave, the ultimate battle. Then step 8 is the ordeal, and then the reward is brought upon you. Act 3 is the return. The road back, the journey towards where they are going to go. Then step 11, the resurrection! You think that you're done with Act 2, but oh no! And then Act 12, the absolute final promise for this time, no true power found with the elixir return, and the end of this story. But like I said before, you can mix this up a bit. You can put some plot points in different acts, so long as it's all necessarily done and you hit those points somewhere in the story, you're gonna be fine. You'll come up with a really interesting story. It's like the 4 chords of music. Using Volger's incarnation of the monomyth, this particular drawing done by Lissa Rankin, Haverok and I managed to create one specifically going all the way up to the end of the Frieza arc, including the Saiyan and Raditz arcs along the way. This is a way to be able to show what Volger, Campbell and Rankin were going for in just one diagram. This isn't the only way of interpreting the Frieza story. You can easily just pick and choose where you want to go, mix things up a little bit. I'd love to see what you think of it, so just tweet me at MasakoX with your own interpretation of the hero's journey for any arc in Dragon Ball. Just use the points that I've talked about and come back to me. Nonetheless, when you look at this particular diagram, you can instantly tell that Frieza is the main ordeal of this story. He is there for a reason. He is the key to unlocking Goku's new possibilities. He thought he was done after beating Piccolo Jr. Oh, far from it. The arrival of Raditz opens up Act 2, but Frieza is the main finisher of this particular narrative. Also, in this story, if you look closely, we've interpreted instant transmission as being the elixir, Goku returning to Earth with some kind of new reward, and I would say that's a pretty good reward. You can easily alternatively use the Super Saiyan power as a reward, but sometimes you can easily say that, well, it's not really a reward, it was destiny. But yeah, it's up to you. You can easily interpret it the way you want. Haverok and I chose instant transmission because, let's face it, it was one of the most important things that Goku used in the second half of Dragon Ball Z. If he didn't have it, then things would be dire for Earth. We've talked about many times in discussions that Toriyama's method of writing is all about subverting convention, but whether he likes it or not, the arcs of Dragon Ball and the first 2 major arcs of Dragon Ball Z all follow the conventional monomyth way of storytelling. Yeah, you'd be very surprised. He actually towed the line. But to be fair, this was all done to editorial meddling because those editors knew what they were doing. It's all deeply rooted and connected to the monomyth. That is until Toriyama got complete editorial control and they just chose to let him do his thing to make more money, and it all went to pot in the Buu saga. The monomyth completely breaks down. Gohan's hero journey goes nowhere. His power that he actually acquired, the reward, just ends up not being used and is open-ended. And Goku, instead of passing the torch, decides to take it back from Gohan. So the hero doing his journey has decided, oh no, wait, I want to come back on the journey, so the journey's now not done. Talk about a slap in the face. And if you're thinking this is Toriyama forgetting what he did in previous arcs, don't. This is all completely intentional. This was Toriyama's way of rebelling against the traditional way of storytelling. He was sick and tired of listening to his editors. He didn't want to follow the ways that you'd be taught how to write a story in university and through books. He wanted to do his own thing because it was easy, it was convenient, and he liked it, so there. Little did he know, though, that by reneging the structure that he'd been using for so long and what made Dragon Ball popular, kind of made everyone switch off with Dragon Ball Z at that point. People were just like, this doesn't feel right. Now, before we look into Super, Haverok and I just want to clearly stress that you don't have to be that steadfast with the monomyth. You can subvert the convention and make a good story. It's just the way that Toriyama did it was just so anarchic. Majin Buu subverted the monomyth. What did Super do? Well, it's my personal belief that Super kind of broke the monomyth. Let's just start with Zamasu at first. Zamasu, and then by proxy Goku Black, is supposed to be the evil twin. Typically, an evil doppelganger is meant to represent the darker and sinister undertones of a particular character. They are the embodiment of everything that the good guy has to hide from everybody else. In this setting though, it doesn't really work because Goku Black isn't strictly Goku. It's just Goku's body. Zamasu doesn't delve deep into what makes Goku tick. He doesn't care about that. If you think about it, the whole Goku Black progression would be far more compelling if, once Zamasu took over his body, he began to be corrupted and understand Goku and understand how mortals work. The conquest for power and all that. We got a little bit of it with Zamasu wanting to have a fight, but it could have been easily more explored. And then by the end of it, Goku Black doesn't want to kill mortals anymore. He actually would feel regretful about all of the actions they undertook and would then be overwhelmed by future Zamasu saying, "You're a failure and a disgrace. I'm gonna have to take charge now." But nope, we didn't get that. In fact, he wasn't even Goku's main antagonist. Having Zamasu go against Trunks does work because that is the ordeal for Trunks to face, and ultimately on his own. But then everything gets spoiled by the MacGuffin button come along, undoing everything that Trunks has tried to do and just making it null and void. Trunks doesn't end up wiser or calmer or more assured like he did when he took out Cell and the androids when he went back to the future. He just survives. That's it. Sure, he does have a little bit of a cry with Mai, but after that he's just like, oh well, okay, bye. The rest of it doesn't impact Goku, it doesn't impact on Vegeta, it doesn't really impact on anyone else. In fact, in a way, Goku and Vegeta weren't even needed in the future to begin with. Zamasu could have easily just been bested by Trunks using the Spirit Sword by using every single thing remaining in the universe to take him out, and then that was it. He could have had the button. He could have had the button, and then Zeno would have come down and destroyed everything, and the consequences would have just had the same result. The Tournament of Power is similar. The whole point of Goku gaining wisdom and the acquisition of a new power and reward, the elixir being Ultra Instinct, is completely tossed aside when he forgets Ultra Instinct. We return to the status quo and there are no enlightenment or changes of ways of thinking done at all. He doesn't advance. Everything goes back to the way it was. It just goes back from Act 1, Act 2, not Act 3, and then back to Act 1. You could interpret Jiren as something more, the sinister embodiment of Goku's lust for strength. That would have been an obstacle for Goku to tackle. This could say that this could be you, Goku, if you were obsessive about strength this much. Your naivety is what saves you from being Jiren. Jiren was a hero who lost hope and trust and faith. This is what could have happened Goku, but his faith in his friends was never in jeopardy. If anything, his stance of life has just been emboldened. The fact is, though, he can just do what he wants now because everyone will still be by his side at the end of it. Had Goku been ostracized by everyone saying, "We don't want you risking the future again," that would have been a consequence. But no, everything just goes back to the same old story. Goku has become a Mary Sue. He is right all the time. He is forgiven all the time. He doesn't need to worry about the consequences of his actions. That's a big problem because if you don't advance through your obstacles and actually learn something, all the villains that then come after that are just monsters of the day. Until Toriyama can get off his high horse and go back to the hero's journey monomyth model and give us a compelling villain, Frieza and Cell and King Piccolo and the entirety of the original Dragon Ball is all we're gonna have in terms of compelling story plots. So what do you guys think? Do you think that Zamasu and Jiren are actually good antagonists? Do you think we'll ever see a more compelling villain in Dragon Ball again? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!